This video is intended to teach you how to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. So there are several ways of factoring, and we'll go through all of them. The first couple of examples are factoring by greatest common factor. If you look at a squared and 6a, both of them have an a, so you can divide out an a. A squared divided out of a is an a. 6a divided out of a is a positive 6, which equals to 0. Using the zero product property, a is equal to 0, or a plus 6 equals 0. The opposite of adding is subtracting, so a equals negative 6. Example number 2, b squared minus 7b, the greatest common factor is b. Divide out of b squared take out of b is b, minus 7b take out of b is a 7. Zero product property, b equals 0, b minus 7 equals 0. Solving the equation, adding 7 to both sides, b equals to 7. Remind you that the answers are the x-intercepts of the equation, where the parabola touches the x-axis. Alright, so moving on, these are factored by trial and error, or the various different methods you can do it. But we're looking for numbers that multiply get 6 and add to get 5. And so the numbers that multiply get 6 and add to get 5, well, there's 1 and 6, there's 2 and 3. 1 times 6 is 6, and 2 times 3 is 6, but only 2 plus 3 is the 5. So that is a plus 2 and a plus 3 equals to 0, because 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. So using the zero product property, a plus 2 equals 0, and a plus 3 equals 0. The opposite of adding 2 is subtract 2, so a equals negative 2. The opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3, so a equals negative 3. Numbers that multiply get 5 and add to get 6. Well, 5 is either 1 and 5, or that's it. And so if we want to add to get 6, it has to be 1 plus 5. Now, the problem is that a positive 1 plus a positive 5 is a positive 6, but that is a negative 6. So we want to make both of them negative, because negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5, and negative 1 plus negative 5 is a negative 6. So zero product property, add the 1, add the 5, and that's your answer. Alright. So, numbers that multiply to get 6, and this time subtract to get 5. So numbers that multiply to get negative 6 are 1 and negative 6, or 2 and negative 3. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. If we combine them, 1 and negative 6 is a negative 5. That's a positive 5. So we want to change the signs so we can get the sign to change. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 6, and negative 1 plus 6 is 5. That's f minus 1 and f plus 6 equals to 0. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 6. Negative 1 plus 6 is a positive 5. So f minus 1 is 0. F plus 6 equals 0. Add the 1. F equals 1. Subtract the 6. F equals negative 6. Numbers that multiply to get negative 8 and subtract to get negative 4. So 8 is 1 and negative 8, 2 and negative 4 are the only numbers that multiply to get 8. Because 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, but 2 minus 4 is 2, then this doesn't factor. So there are it cannot factor, which happens sometimes. Alright, so rounding it out, numbers that multiply to get a negative 12 and subtract, since there's not a number in front, 1. Well, negative 12 is 1 and negative 12, 2 and negative 6, 3 and negative 4. Negative 4 plus 3 would be a negative 1. That's a positive 1, so we're going to change the sign so the sign will change. So you have h minus 3 and h plus 4 equals to 0. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. 4 minus 3 is 1. So h minus 3 equals 0, and h plus 4 equals 0. The opposite of subtracting 3 is to add 3, so h equals 3. Opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4, so h equals negative 4. Numbers that multiply to get 24, that add to get 11. Well, the numbers that multiply to get 24, 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. And these numbers, the ones that add to get 11, are 3 and 8. But a positive 3 and a positive 8 is a positive 11, and that is a negative 11. So we change the signs so the signs will change. So j minus 3 and j minus 8 equals 0. Negative 3 times negative 8 is positive 24. Negative 3 plus negative 8 is a negative 11. Zero product property. The opposite of adding 3 is the opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3. The opposite of subtracting 8 is adding 8. And there's your answers. Now, the last two examples are a little bit more complicated because there is a coefficient of a number in front of the square term. And what we do is we multiply that times the 7. So we can get a 1 here. So we just take the 2 and move it to the back. So that's going to be k squared plus 9k plus 14 equals to 0. Because 2 times 7 is 14. Now, we find numbers that multiply to get 14 and add to get 9. Well, numbers that multiply to get 14 are either 1 and 14 or 2 and 7. 2 plus 7 is 9. So you have k plus 2, and you have k plus 7. You have to remember, though, that you multiplied 2 to begin with. So we need to divide 2 to end with so we can go back to what we had. So we're going to divide by 2. We multiply by 2, so we're going to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now 7 doesn't divide by 2, so we're going to bring it out front again so that we can have that 2 that's in front. And so now we can have the zero product property. Subtract the 1, k equals negative 1. Subtract the 7, 2k equals negative 7, divide by the 2, and k equals negative 7 halves. For the advanced students, notice here that 2 divided by 2 is 1. That's a positive. It became negative. So the opposite of a positive 1 is a negative 1. The opposite of a positive 7 halves is a negative 7 halves. And when you're solving, that's the shortcut you can take. Alright, last one. There's a 3 in front, so we're going to multiply that 3 to the back. It says m squared minus 10m minus 24 equals to 0. Numbers that multiply get negative 24. 1 and negative 24, 2 and negative 12, 3 and negative 8, 4 and negative 6. 2 and negative 12, subtract to get negative 10. So we have m minus 12 and m plus 2 equals 0. We divide by that 3 that we began with. We've multiplied 3 to get to 24, so we're going to divide the 3 so we can put the 3 back in front. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 2 divided by 3 doesn't go, so we'll put the 3 back in front. Advanced students, that's a negative 4, so the answer is going to be positive 4. That's a positive 2/3, it's going to be a negative 2/3. But here we go. Zero product property. Add the 4. Add the 4. M equals to 4. Subtract the 2. 3m equals negative 2. Divide by the 3, and m equals negative 2/3 as promised. So, there it is. That is how you solve quadratic equations by factoring. Hope this has been helpful. And so, yeah,